BCRC show, the show that advocates that BC resources should make BC jobs. I am your host, Clint Chappell. Before we get started, just want to thank all the essential and frontline workers who are currently keeping us safe through COVID-19 right now. Again, we've had a little bit of an uptick here recently. So let's just make sure we're all wearing our masks and then having some safe practices here right now. It doesn't look like we got 6 feet between us, but we do, and everything's looking good here. So my guest here today is Don Willimont, the Cutbanks Conversation podcaster. How's it going today, Don?
It's going awesome. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's really cool to have you on. Obviously, you're in the hunting game, and it's not something that I'm really into too much, but I'm excited to learn some stuff from you here today. And we recorded the podcast before the show, so got a cool little insights from you. And
Yep.
Let's just get started here. So, what brought you to BC?
So I've been in the car business since about 1992, and I was working at a Ford store. I was a sales director there, and it was a busy store, great employer. But my wife and I, once upon a time, did a holiday, or pardon me, we holidayed every year in Kelowna. I lived in Kelowna in '94 briefly, and I always wanted to come back. And I sold my wife on that bill of goods. So I said, "Hey, we're going to move to BC," and in that version of it, it was Kelowna. And I finally said, you know what? If we don't make the move to BC before I'm 50, I was 48 at the time. I said, hey, it's never going to happen. So I looked around, found a job, and I was looking for less hours, no evenings, a little bit more time to hunt and do the things I love. And that's how we ended up here. Prince George was definitely not part of the plan, but my wife and I wouldn't have it any other way now. So.
What's funny is you just said, shorter hours, but when I was selling cars, I do not remember shorter hours and shorter days. I remember longer days and Kamloops where it's smoking hot. The asphalt is just, you could cook eggs on it. And I do not remember any short days.
I don't remember. I would tell you it is a gift to be in Prince George where we're closed in the evenings. I love it.
So, that's awesome.
Yeah, love it.
So let's talk a little bit with your involvement into hunting as recreation. Like, how long have you been into hunting, and why is it important to you? Let's get a little bit in deep here with you.
So I'm what they call the term that we use in the hunting community is an adult onset hunter. So I came into hunting in about 1996. I was dating a girl. Her family was big hunters on a farm in Saskatchewan, and there'd always been a level of appeal for me. And then I finally had somebody to mentor me and kind of get me started. So I kind of jumped in with both feet and became a hardcore whitetail hunter. And it was kind of born out of that. And I stayed that way until today. And it was part of what my consideration was when I decided to move west and ultimately agreed to the job here in Prince George.
Well, you guys, if you have any questions here for Don, please just leave them in the comment section. I will read them out here as we get done our interview. If you guys want to catch up with us on any of our social media pages, please go to Instagram, get into at the BCRC on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, BC_resources. We have a huge following of Twitter of 39 people. So we would really like to see that, grow a little bit. I think Twitter there's some cool stuff we can do on Twitter. Follow us or subscribe to our channel on YouTube as well. We want to get up to a couple hundred followers on YouTube so we can maybe start doing the live shows from or on YouTube so more people can access them. LinkedIn, find us on LinkedIn. Really anywhere social media is, you're going to see the BCRC. And we really want to grow the brand because, we want everyone to know that BC resources should make BC jobs, and that, we're all BC resources. We're all in this fight together. So let's really start sharing our content and getting to make sure everyone in BC knows who we are. So your involvement with Spruce City Wildlife Association, can you talk about that for a bit, and what a bit about Spruce City and what they do?
So Spruce City Wildlife Association has been around for a long time here in Prince George. It's been a very robust organization involved in fish, wildlife, and conservation, advocating on all of those things and maintaining those traditions. When I moved here in 2015, one of the decisions I made when I moved to British Columbia was I would stop just being a hunting person who recreates in that world, and I would become more involved in advocacy and start putting some time in as a volunteer. So I joined Spruce City right away. And we have revitalized a terrific hatchery program. So thanks to guys like Dustin Snyder, our vice president, and Steve Hamilton, our president, and a great board, a very active board. It's not a huge club, or just over 200 and some odd members, but they have done a dynamite job revitalizing a terrific salmon hatchery program. that we're currently in the middle of a fairly significant renovation and expansion.
Yeah, I seen that.
And we're doing lots of advocacy work. We've done fundraising and stuff for, collaring projects, different kinds of scat studies for moose and bear over the years. We've done inventory counts or helped in inventory counts, and we're looking to expand our wildlife involvement and do some other things in terms of trails. Trails and Rex BC, we have a couple of co-sponsored projects with them and some other initiatives that we're working on. But it's a great chance to work with a lot of people that are like-minded and care about hunting, fishing, and conservation issues in British Columbia. So.
Well, you're involved. Obviously, you've created like 250 Predator or 250 Predator and 250 Hunter, etc. The whole bunch of them. Now you're in the podcast game. So how's that going? Like, we've had a couple podcasts come out, and obviously, I know hunters like to really stick together here. So how's that podcast going?
It's gone really. It's gone better than I would have imagined. We're not experts on anything, but we assembled a really good cast. So I'd speak to that. It's Steve Hamilton from Spruce City Wildlife. He's also with Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Dustin Slander, our vice president, local business owner here. Mike Morris, the MLA. We've got Michael Schneider from Driftwood Valley Outfitters. Maddie Starnes, who's a nurse here. And Connor Borsa, who's from Port Moody. And Cassie Premack from KKS Tactical, a local business here. So all of us together. We've kind of cobbled together this group of perspectives and a lot of people that are passionate about, our outdoor traditions and doing things positive on the landscape and advocating for these traditions to continue. So it's been super rewarding. So the podcast started with nothing, and we picked some very contentious issues. So we started with everything from, wolves and the salmon crisis. We looked at the impacts we actually did an entire episode on the impacts that industry can have on the land base. And we looked at examples of good and examples of bad. And we've just continued to look for different kinds of discussions that, draw people's interest in a hunting and fishing or conservation-based context, but uniquely around BC. So we went from nothing. Now we're over 2,000 subscribers.
Holy smokes.
And we have people in New Zealand. We've got people in Ireland. We've got people in Germany. We've got people in Switzerland. We've got American listeners.
Oh, that's
so
unreal.
It's gone way better than we imagined. So
you're going to be almost a full-time podcaster here. You're gonna
it's starting to feel like that a whole lot. Yeah.
You're going to have to dump the car game and just go full out Joe Rogan here.
Like the car, no way. Like the car business too much. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I know some people here when we kind of, again, if you guys actually if you have any questions for Don, please leave them in the comment section below. I know he's game to answer almost anything here. So leave your comments in the section below, and we'll see what Don can answer. John, it looks like your brother might have said hi.
Hey, John, how's it going, brother? Thanks for tuning in, my one fan. Yay.
Your brother's your fan?
Yeah, my only fan.
Oh my God, my brother ain't my fan. I'll tell you that much. So let's talk a little bit about hunting and fishing and intersecting with industry, like kind of from your perspective. How do you see those two things kind of meshing together? I'm sure that you got a lot of good thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, I think it's super relevant for this particular program. I mean, working in a car dealership, retailing and servicing vehicles, our customer base is largely made up out of your employment base. Right. So the people that support our initiatives, do fundraising, come to our fundraising banquets, that donate money, work in the same spaces. They're in logging, they're in pipelines, they're in industry, they're doing all of those things. So we have a vested interest, and they have a vested interest. They work real hard so that they can recreate and they can hunt and they can fish on their weekends. They have a vested interest in whether there's wildlife, a healthy wildlife population at the end of it. So they're as invested because they're our brothers and sisters in the outdoor community. So I think those things absolutely go together. So you need people to make a living, because the people that make a living have money to fund projects, buy tags, go out and enjoy those backcountry spaces and visit those communities there where those resources are. So
I really don't know too many people that are in the industry that aren't in the hunting, into fishing, other than myself. I don't know. I'm just weird. I guess I like the golf.
There's going to be a couple of you. There'll be a couple. There's 2 or 3 people in all of BC. You're number 3.
That's right. That's right. No, I grew up on the farm, so it kind of, I never really had to we not had to. That's not the right word, but we never really got into hunting because we were so busy on the farm. Really, the only hunting-ish type stuff that we would have to do is, if bears were on the property and all that sort of fun stuff. We wouldn't ever take care of them, but we would just try to get them off the property. So that's kind of the most extent I have with it. So like a question I always have for anyone that's in the hunting game, I guess,
Yeah.
what age, and you've already touched on it a little bit and you kind of touched on the podcast, but what age do you generally see people get into hunting at?
I think that's changed over time. There's two kinds of hunters. There's people that grow up around it, and so they'll be probably brought into a hunter education program around 10 or 11, and I think they can legally be accompanied to hunt in most provinces, probably around the age of 12. But for me personally, I mean, I'm what we call an adult onset hunter, meaning that I didn't grow up around it. So there's a couple of things that are interesting about in the hunting space. About 10% of the people that hunt in BC and in Canada are women, but that's where the single largest growth is, and that growth is actually in women under the age of 35. That's where you're seeing the largest growth in the hunting community. So we have some challenges with recruiting new hunters. So it'd be great if you can get at them early so they get the experience and they can get outdoors and just see what that's like. That doesn't mean pulling the trigger and shooting something. Just get them out to interact around wildlife or fish, or just in backcountry spaces. That's usually all it takes to get them started. And then after that, I think everything else becomes more of a natural progression, and you can evolve them, through all of the different phases that I've gone through. So it just depends on where you start. Great to start early, but if you start late, the one thing I would say is people that come to hunting later in life, like myself, those reasons are usually significantly different than people that are in it, or they don't. I guess the things that they value are different when they start hunting later on in life.
Well, you got a question here from Maddie. If you get anyone onto the Cutbanks conversations, who would it be?
Who would it be? Maddie, you know the answer. It's Steve Ranella or Ben O'Brien from the Meat Eater and the Hunting Collective. Love to get one of those two guys on our podcast someday. Never gonna happen. So
it's like me. I want Gordon Ramsay on this thing. I for some reason I have a fascination with like we had the MasterChef season 4 winner of Canada actually on our show here a couple weeks ago, and I just have such a fascination with like cooking and stuff. If I could get Gordon Ramsay on this show, that would make my life.
I'd 100% do it. But let's have him do a wild game deal.
Yeah, that's right. You know what?
We'll have Marshall.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do both. I think that would be lots of fun. Question from Steve here. What's your favorite wild game dish?
My favorite wild game dish, hands down. So dish or meat.
You didn't say uh-oh. He thought you were going to say uh-oh.
Yeah, no. My favorite wild game dish is going to be tied around bear, and it's going to be Hank Shaw, who everybody needs to follow on Instagram. My wife just did Hank Shaw's bear bolognese sauce. I'm telling you, it is lights out delicious. It is on a whole other plane. It is just absolutely delicious. Bear has actually become the number one staple protein in our house.
I got bear roast right now in my freezer.
There you go. Yeah, we absolutely love it.
Yeah, but that's my dad's favorite, and my uncle he gave us a bunch, and yeah, I got a roast right now. Yeah, I'm not allowed to cook it though. It's for my dad whenever he comes to town. So, well, my mother is on here, so that's lots of fun. Oh yeah, my grandpa once shot a moose from right off the barn door, kind of right all the way way. I don't know. It's not that good.
But you know what's interesting? I moved out here, and this will speak a little bit to the situation that we're at with moose in British Columbia. When I moved out here, I mean, we had a lot of moose in Saskatchewan, and particularly, and you said your mom she's from where?
My mom's from Speedy Creek.
Okay, so, but in the southern part of the province, I would tell you, it is crazy the amount of moose that we were seeing in the last 15 years. But when I came out here, and I mean, a lot of my hunting friends know this, I'm like, I saw more moose in a day in Saskatchewan than I would see driving 1,000 kilometers over our FSR roads here.
Yeah.
So, and I said, I thought you guys had lots of moose. And there was once upon a time we did. That's the first time that I became aware in the first year here that we had a serious moose crisis. I'd heard people talk about it, but until I started to get out and really explore the backcountry, I wasn't aware of it, because it's a stark contrast from the moose density that we were seeing in Saskatchewan. And we have 147,000-ish moose spread across this province. That's a big footprint and a lot of backcountry, and you got to go a long way to see moose, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. My wife's from Vancouver originally, but before she came up here, lived up here for a couple of years. We lived in Kamloops for 11 years. She'd never even seen a moose
Yeah.
until we moved to Prince George. And really, it was between Prince George and McBride. And my wife was sleeping. She'd never seen a moose. And this moose came right across the road. I slammed on the brakes. I turned around the vehicle. I shook my wife. I'm like, it was just like a year. Like, it was not a little moose.
There was, yeah. I was good. There would have been a time where I said, "Oh, you're the guy that saw the moose." I've heard there's a moose somewhere in BC.
That's right.
Yeah.
McBride has a couple.
Yeah, they got a few.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, one thing I kind of want to talk on here too is with you being in the car business,
Yep.
a lot of your customers are obviously in the resource industry. So when a project like the West Coast Oil Fins gets announced coming to Prince George, I'm sure that kind of gets you excited because more people are going to have. There's going to be more funds to be able to spend at your dealership. People are going to be able to spend more money within the city, possibly clean up downtown if we can. That must excite you.
It does actually. I mean, I've been waiting for some good news stories as we have, curtailments in forestry, the pipeline that seemed like, it's been a bit of a stall to get things moving. And then West Coast Olefin is an announcement. I mean, I really hope Ken James and the team get that thing going soon, because it actually puts a lot of wind in the sails of my staff.
Mm-hmm.
And when the other thing that's interesting is, when you get those, when you get any kind of a news update or any kind of an announcement, I'm telling you, the showroom traffic, like, as it starts to, it gets a little dry, you get a few days of dry weather, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, they're hauling logs again. They're hauling logs, I'm busy. They're dry enough to start laying pipe, I'm busy. They start talking about West Coast Olefins and, we're getting close to an agreement, I get busy. So those things are super important because they're drivers for not just my business, but business in general. So, I mean, we need that, everybody wants wind in their sails, and that's what we're looking for. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to diversify the economy, and not just in Prince George either. I hope people realize that it's not just Prince George that's going to be affected by this. It's going to be Kamloops, it's going to be Kelowna, it's going to be the province of BC.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start diversifying, again, we're never going to get away from the forest industry. I really honestly believe the forest industry is the backbone of BC. But once we can diversify and show leaders around the world that, hey, you know what, you can invest in BC and your investment is going to pay dividends for you. I think that's really, really important. And a project like West Coast Oil Fins, it's once in a lifetime. Like when else are you going to get announced a $5.6 billion project that's coming to BC or to Prince George? That won't happen again. And I really hope, as a town, as a province, as a region, as a people, as a community, that we realize that we have an opportunity to change history for BC. We have an opportunity to really change the perception of BC. And I really want that message to get across, because I feel like there's a lot of negativity towards stuff.
Yeah.
And people need to realize you can be negative, but you also have to be willing to listen.
Yeah.
I have to be willing to listen to the other side, and the other side has to be willing to listen to us. And somewhere in the middle, we can come together and get this project landed here in Prince George. It's going to change. It's going to change people's lives, and really, it's going to change a whole region of people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the car business, I use a phrase: somewhere between what you want and what I want, somewhere in the middle, there's this thing called the car deal, right? But we look at that for a lot on a lot of fronts. I mean, we talk about this when you have, hunting and fishing and the people in our community versus the people that don't want us to do that and don't want those us to have that as a recreation or an avocation. We can spend a lot of time talking about how we're different, or we can spend a little bit of time talking about where we converge versus where we diverge, right? Yeah. We'll get way farther in that conversation. Let's start where we come together. And when we look at the hunting community as a whole, you've got guides and outfitters and First Nations and trappers and other consumptive users on the landscape, and we all interact with those resources, but we all have wildly different perspectives. One of the cool things that we've been able to facilitate, particularly in the PG area, is we've assembled a group of First Nations and guides and trappers and outfitters that we're all aligned. That podcast is born out of the kind of arrangement. So we all have different ways that we might see that thing, but we're all united on the one thing. And that's to make sure we maximize what we get out of our wild resources. And I think if they're all from British Columbia and you're looking at BC as a resource place, you got to be together, because it's for the good of the province. It's not just for the good of us in the north. It's the good of the province if we have a vibrant resource sector, right? So I think people need to embrace that versus push it off, right?
I really think that, you know, we're doing some pretty cool things with the BCRC here, and we're gonna be releasing some cool little videos and stuff like that that can show you how, you know, how resources affect your everyday life.
Yep.
And I really think that's important that people again realize that it's not just going into my pocket, because my money gets spent downtown Vancouver. My money goes into the stock market. My money, you know, resource money goes everywhere. And I really hope that it goes to your car dealership. Once you
for
give
sure
me
it does.
that car deal you're talking about, we're still a little bit far away on those numbers. But
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
no, you know, I really hope people realize that. So where can people find you? What's your Instagrams, your what, like, let's give
I
your
wouldn't
thumb
follow
here.
me on Instagram, but you can find us at cutbanksconversations.ca. You can find us at Spruce City Wildlife Association on Facebook. And you can certainly find me. Just follow me on Facebook. I'm an easy guy to get a hold of. If you're looking for a great community of like-minded people, any of the 250 hunter, predator, angler, and alpine, those are all different properties. We'd be happy to have you on board. A few little skill testing questions to make sure you're legit, and then and then away we go. So
Awesome. Well, I think this is going to be it. The questions have kind of dried up here. It's getting late. You know, that Corona is getting a little colder every moment. So,
oh, I know she's hot outside. Yeah, I dig it.
So thank you very much for coming on, Don. I really appreciate it today.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
All right. So for Don Willimont, the Cutbanks Conversation podcaster, my name is Clint Chappell, and this has been the BCRC Show. You guys have a great night.